Hey, so good day, good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are. I'm PL Stewart. I'm here with a brilliant guest, Scott Palmer. First of all, know there's, especially in North America and going through the US, parts of Canada, there's a huge storm going on. So hope everybody's staying safe and warm. Hope you have power. Just please be safe. The weather's really bad out there. I'm fortunate 2 hours north of Toronto. We're not getting hit the same way. My dear friend Scott here, he's in London where he used to live. I know they get blasted. So, but just in general, everybody stay safe. But the main thing is, we're here. This is Six Elementals. This is the brilliant Scott Palmer. I have quickly become a huge fan of his work. Sound of Stormfall. This was an absolutely brilliant novella. I mean, I don't want a shot call, and it's early in the year, but this has the potential, even with all the great reads I've had, to wind up on my top year-end list. And I know it's January, but that's how good this was. This was absolutely stunningly brilliant. I had the pleasure of meeting Scott at London Comic Con, where he lives. But we're going to hear all about Scott and his wonderful writing and everything about him. But let me just welcome you, Scott, to Six Elementals Interviews. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, my friend. And again, thank you for all the kind words. Really appreciate it. Those kind of things, like right now, I'm PL. I'm in the midst of deep into edits. So I'm handing in my latest book into copy edits in about 3 weeks. So this is the grinding stage when you're just grinding away. So hearing those little compliments that you just gave me really give me a boost in my coffee. It just helps me get through that last little bit of, just chair. It's at this point, it's just chair time, I call it. It's not glorious. It's not, it's just, you got to sit down in the chair and do the work, make those edits, get that thing polished up. Right. But I appreciate the kind words.
Well, it's not just me, Scott. I mean, you have already, in a short space of time, accumulated a fabulous reputation as definitely one of the rising stars of Grimdark. I would argue that it's definitely happening. Like Fanfi Addict Award, Best Indie Novel 2024. You have a Pencraft Awards winner for literary excellence, a Literary Titan Book Award. You got some hardware, my friend. So obviously someone's been paying attention and noticing your greatness. So I think that, I could get stars the limit. I can definitely see that you are absolutely a rising star in the grimdark milieu. And I was just telling backstage folks, we were just talking earlier, and I was just saying, like, I read a lot, I think broadly, but grimdark I think is a subgenre I have really high standards for. And Scott has leapt over that standard bar, and he's exceeding. We're talking about with the Michael R. Fletchers and the R. Scott Backers and the Drawer Cromies, and like, this is fabulous stuff. I had the honor of Scott doing a book exchange with Scott when we met at a Comic-Con. So he gave me a copy of this and the first book in his main series, Memory Song. And I cannot wait. I'm reading that. I cannot wait to get to this.
You're the best, Bill. I really appreciate that. Hey, I knew when we were talking, I knew that I had a good chance of you liking it because we both share a deep love for Bernard Cornwell. And I was like, if you like that kind of gritty old stuff, I mean, I've tried to really add that mud, as you would say. That's why I like to put it. It's very muddy because it's right down in it. It's not. It's like wooden walls, wooden palisades, chipped stone brick. It's really kind of back in the grittiness of it. And I think that kind of adds to the element. That's one of the things I really liked about, again, Bernard Cornwell, is it gave that grimdark feeling while still making it feel very real and historical. And that was very much what I wanted to capture. So I think that maybe it was unfair bias because I was writing in a style almost copying some of your favorite books, inspired by, I should say, not copying because.
Well, it certainly worked for me. It was absolutely astounding. So, and we're going to get into that in your writing soon. Quickly, I want to say shout out to the wonderful Alicia from Birdie and the books. Alicia, thanks so much for coming out. My sister from another mother. We share the same birthday. She's a brilliant booktuber. Check out her channel and all her content. I'm honored that she's leading one of the deep dives into my series with her, the awesome Jen, and Epic Tales. So thank you, Alicia. Always a great day to see you show up in the chat. Thanks for coming to check out Scott and his work. Alicia, highly recommended. Great stuff just from reading the one novella. So especially, I think Epic definitely will will like that because he loves his grimdark. So this is something you guys should be checking out. But thanks again for showing up, Lizzie, to say hi to Scott and check out his work. Heath Smith,
Hey, Heath.
howdy.
I gotta give a special shout out to Heath. I know he's traveling right now. He's been an incredible fan, I should say. More than a fan, he's quickly become a friend. He's super inspired by the series, and he's inspired me just with how inspired he is by the characters. He really vibed with the Rangers. He's a nature guy, which is, again, something that's very poignant in my books. I try to really bring nature as almost a character rather than just like a background thing. So Heath, thanks. I'm glad you could make it, my friend.
That is awesome. Well, Heath, thanks so much for coming to support Scott. Without people like Heath, authors, we don't have anyone reading the books, and and people like Heath also keep us motivated. In those, as Scott talked about, the editing doldrums and those really tough parts of writing. Not that they're not important facets of writing, but those tough parts was more of a grind and less the pure creative process. So thank you, Heath, for being you and coming out. And Alicia says, "Oh, thank you." well, I gotta say, what I know is that you love great prose, which Scott definitely has.
I love
and really compelling characters, which Scott also definitely has. So I think you would enjoy it. And then Heath says, there you go. Fantastic. So, Scott, how did this journey of writing all get started for you?
Oh yeah, well that's a great story. I mean, it's kind of a long process for me. I've been like lifelong pursuit of art in one way or another. I spent about a decade and a half before I started writing in a band. So playing music is it's where I met my wife. It's where I very much found like that the creative process in terms of putting in work produces results. I got to learn that from just learning instruments, from writing songs and stuff. It was starting to get to the point where I was feeling kind of unfulfilled. I couldn't really figure out why. But at that time, I was playing a lot of Skyrim. And what I was doing with the Skyrim game is I was writing backstories of these characters. So like if you're unfamiliar with the game, you start off, it's kind of you get to pick a generic character with an unknown backstory. So they just show up, they're in a prison cell, and you kind of have to you kind of creating your own background. So what I was doing is writing these backstories, and I didn't know that that was what I really, really wanted to do, was to create these characters. So the band started to get more and more dull to me, and I was like just so interested in writing, and I was like, well, this isn't good. I'm playing a lot of video games, like, there's got to be a more productive. So anyways, long story, when COVID finally hit, I shouldn't say when COVID finally hit, when COVID happened, I was already kind of playing around with writing. I'd already kind of started to, I'm just going to see if I can take these backstories and create a full story. I couldn't. I was very bad. Like if you remember your very first stories, they were just really bad. But the important thing was that I was trying. So when COVID hit and I kind of had to like reconsider what I was going to do creatively with my life, I decided to hire a writing coach. So these things were going around a lot on Facebook back in the day. They're still going around. Very kind of, they're very much associated with scams and a lot of this kind of thing. I luckily found a person that I trusted, a program that I kind of bought into, and hiring that writing coach was one of the best things I ever did because I had never learned how to write. So basically he taught me all of the ins and outs of like how to produce a story, just plot, like how to make a compelling plot, how to take these character ideas that I had and actually make a circular arc with these characters. And that's when I just started writing. And I had it started with a map. I had a map and I wanted to build a world from that map. I quickly learned that it was very difficult to write a fantasy story in a sprawling epic world. It's like, how do you make this a compelling narrative? So my writing coach just kept poking holes in everything I was doing. Finally, I just kind of had the idea to kind of separate it and have everything, the main story, be up in the north of my map. And that's when it kind of all hit, because I was able to make the story a little smaller so I could get a full plot kind of figured out. And the idea that I had, and this is kind of funny, I get this cool author moment where I did have this vision of the first chapter. I was writing this other book and it was just not going well. I was about maybe 60,000 words into this book, and it was all just nonsense. Like, I knew there was no ending. The characters sucked. I was like, this is bad. And then I was like, I had this vision of a character sitting around a fire, but the fire wasn't burning. There was just a dead fire pit. And then ghosts started to come in and sit around the fire pit with this character. And my head was like, well, this is pretty cool image. Like, a guy sitting there, ghosts coming in, crowding around. I'm a big fan of horror. Horror novels like Stephen King and just horror movies are some of the biggest influences in my life. So I immediately was trying to think of Sixth Sense. And I was like, I loved the character talking to ghosts. And how can I take this vision I just had of this fantasy character with a sword? Now there's ghosts crowding in. Like, can he talk to them? I think he can. Like, and started figuring out the world building about, how can this character do that? That mixed with my intense love of mythology and lore. And this goes back to our Bernard Cornwell talk, that just intense, the history, the realness, that gives what I think of the lore, and then mixed in with mythology, which is, again, like Lord of the Rings. It's very big in Song of Ice and Fire. And when I combined the three of the character with the ghosts, the history and lore, the mythology, and my map, when those things all came together, I was like, holy, there's something here. Like, there's like the bones of something here. And I wrote that first book, A Memory of Song, and it was a longer process. It took about 2 years to get the first draft down. Part of the reason I actually wrote a full draft in 13 months, but there was problems with it. I had a third character. The way A Memory of Song is now is 2 characters. One of the characters was down further south, and my writing coach kind of helped me realize that this story's too big. And again, by cutting that other character, which was hard to do as a young writer, that was like 50,000 words that I just canned out of the book. It made everything just tighten right up. And once it all tightened up, I was able to spend it was about 7 months layering in. And this is what my wife and I joked. We were layering a cake. I remember this summer of 2022, and it was me layering the cake. I had all the bones of the book. The plot was all done, but it was missing the stuff that I think that you would probably say you enjoy about the books. It was missing the lore, the stories within the stories, which a fantasy story, to me, one of the best things is that you've got this one story, but it's many small stories within. And your characters are telling stories about the past and just kind of making this world feel really lived in through stories and songs, of course, which is where the music comes in. But once I kind of had the blocks out, once I kind of realized the story was up here, that's when I was able to really take that dead fire. And the concept of the first book, A Memory of Song, is that the elements have died. So the fire stopped burning, rain stopped falling, wind stopped blowing, and the earth isn't even, so like the earth's not even decomposing. So it's kind of this stagnant, dark place that set the tone, that allowed me to take my horror roots and kind of everything and make epic fantasy that felt different from what I was used to reading. Because I didn't set out to necessarily be like to make something completely unique or whatever, but I knew that what my interests weren't necessarily the most like popular story. So I knew naturally I was going to write something a bit different, something leaning a bit more towards the horror genre. And I think that once A Memory of Song was fully edited, around a year and 7 months, I had the thing ready. I made a decision at that point where I saw Ryan Cahill, one of my inspirations in this industry. He had just released Of War and Ruin. So I had watched Ryan's journey up until that point. I'd been following him in Facebook groups and reading his books and all that stuff. And before Of War and Ruin, it's hard for people, this is almost ancient history now, but before that third book came out, he was almost like human. And I don't mean that in like a insulting way. I mean that in the best of ways. I mean that it seemed like it was very in reach. Like what he was doing was very like, I could do that too. Like he wasn't necessarily in the stratosphere at that point. When book 3 dropped, he started to hit that trajectory of going up like a rocket ship. And I kind of realized, and I was talking with my wife, I was like, I think self-publishing is the approach here. Because I had wrote the book planning to query it. I had wrote it as a standalone with series potential. And I was unsure when the book was finished which direction I wanted to take. But there was this distinct moment where Of War and Ruin came out, and I watched it. And a couple days after it came out, or I don't remember how long it was, but I soon saw it on Mike's book reviews. And I was just like, this guy was just an indie author. Now he's on Mike's book reviews. Like, he's getting the same attention as like traditionally published authors. And all of a sudden it was all possible. Like, everything I had was possible because I knew writing my book the way I did as a standalone with series potential, I had so much stuff on the table that I didn't put into that book. I had to leave so many things out of it to make that first book really kind of work on the grand scale I was going for. And that's where The Sound of Starfall came in too, is that it was a way for me to kind of build on A Memory of Song, but I wouldn't have been able to do The Sound of Starfall if I was querying, because like, how do you query a full book and a little novella? So again, I think it was that moment of just freedom. I think of realizing I've got this story and now I can actually just tell it however I want and put it out. And my wife and I kind of talked, we're like, it's an investment, but like, can we make this work? And it kind of just went from there. And then once I had A Memory of Song out, I wrote The Sound of Starfall in literally 3 weeks, because it was just like, I had all that stuff there, and it's only about a 25,000 word novella. So it's kind of short, but most all, like, I had that stuff all built up in my head, like how I wanted to tell the story and expand on this thing that started up here in the north, but it's so much bigger than that. And then Piel, when I was able to start writing book 2, which again was only like a few months after I released The Sound of Starfall, because I'm not waiting on an agent, I'm not waiting on anything. I just got right into it. And when book 2 started coming out, I was able to expand on everything from book 1, and it really kind of just took shape. I mean, I was able to bring back in the character that I cut out of book 1. So I had those 50,000 words. They needed a lot of rearranging and reshuffling, but the core of it was still there, which was really cool. And it was able to just grow. And I felt like when I was writing book 2 that I just had the whole world in front of me. Like, it was like, I can just expand anything I want. I have no one's holding me back. And I was lucky enough to have people reading the book at that point. So I was like, I'm also getting this cool experience of like writing to people and being like, oh, they're going to like this. And like, but it was kind of just a slow process that hit a downward slope at one point and hasn't stopped, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And just for those of you, I know I've interviewed a lot of indie authors. I'm one myself, and there's no right way to publish. It's all about what works for you. However, I will always laud the benefits of indie. You just heard Scott talk about them. You've heard many guests talk about it. Traditionally publishing is, of course, a wonderful, viable path. It is, for some people, the only path that they wish to take. But the more and more I think people are starting to realize that indie publishing is something that can work and can be extremely rewarding, fulfilling, and profitable. But I want to quickly, a couple quick questions for you, and I'll let you answer them. I'm going to guess that Alicia puts up, is your work available in the US? I presume so, yes?
Yes, yep, on Amazon, and it should be on Barnes & Noble as well. If you want like a physical copy, you should be able to find them on Barnes & Noble as well.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So Alicia, there you go, and get that. Craig says, "Hey, I have had A Memory of Song. I sat on my shelf for too long. Do I have to read Sound of Starfall first?"
So no, you actually there's a reading order. I'll read it to you guys right now while we're here. So I wrote those books in a way that you could start with The Sound of Starfall, or you could start with A Memory of Song, and the main difference is the overall effect of what you're going to get. So like, there's obviously, as authors, we have different tools that we can use. The reading order only adjusts how those tools are going to affect you. So for instance, there's the melodic reading order. This describes a thread of sound informed by 2 or more notes playing in tandem, capturing both expectation and suspense in its unfolding. So this would be The Sound of Starfall first, A Memory of Song, and then A Chorus of War. The melodic reading order allows the reader to experience a memory of song informed by notes from the past, causing increased tension. So when you read The Sound of Starfall, PL, you've picked up a couple names, you've picked up a couple locations and a couple events, right? When you're reading A Memory of Song, you're going to see those names, places, events pop up, it's going to cause you more tension because you're going to have an understanding those words are going to mean something to you, and it's going to cause more tension. Where if you had read A Memory of Song first, those would be more twisty and turny. You wouldn't necessarily know what the meaning was. So the second reading order is called volatile. The volatile reading order describes something that is liable to change rapidly, making the music's mood or direction mysterious and hard to predict. So that would be A Memory of Song first, The Sound of Starfall, then A Chorus of War. The volatile reading order allows the reader to experience a memory of song deaf to any previous influence. This will generate the most impact from the twists and turns of the story. So again, you're going to see names and places pop up, but they're not going to mean anything to you. So that when these things overall have their twists and turns, you're not going to have any foreshadowing of that. So you're basically hopping in volatilely into this reading order, not knowing what's going to come at you. And then if you read The Sound of Starfall after A Memory of Song, it's going to do kind of like a refresher, kind of explaining. It's going to answer some of the mysteries that may have been there from Memory of Song. And it just kind of gives you two different effects, like I said. And so a lot of the people who started reading, the books came out A Memory of Song first, and then The Sound of Starfall. So people who have been reading my book since the very beginning, they're diehard that it has to be A Memory of Song first, right? But recently, the past year, like I've had a ton of people reading The Sound of Starfall first, saying it's the best way to go because it sucks you in. It's like, I mean, you've read it first, so you can give testament to that. You're officially doing the, I guess you would be officially melodic. PL Stewart, you are on the melodic side, which means you're going to get, when you do read A Memory of Song, it's going to have increased tension. It's gonna.
I love that, and I have to say, I really have to commend you. Rarely have I seen an author document a reading order and make it sound so compelling, and also that it's so detailed, and it also provides the reader the opportunity to feel confident that, irrespective of how I experience the series, whether I read the novel first or whether I read it later or at some juncture of the series, that I'm still can have an enriched experience. Like, but yet you detail that was just phenomenal. I'm sitting here going, "Oh my gosh, this was that like that was."
Awesome. Can I tell you my secret? So I took that from Ryan Cahill. Now I've made it my own thing. His is different.
Yeah.
But I've made it very specific to the Last Ballad series.
Okay.
But same thing. Ryan Cahill had a reading order. I was like, that's genius. I'm going to do that for my own series. But his is sword movements within. I can't even remember the names of them. But it's like, so I wanted to do, my series is called The Last Ballad, very much musically driven. So obviously to get a reading order that has musical connotations would have been more suiting for my series than, but that's what I think. I think this is what's also great about being indie, just being a creative in general, is that when I learned probably a decade ago that the best way to create was to grasp your inspirations.
Yeah.
And to build off your inspirations as a base point. I think a lot of young artists, young creatives, they have this thing where they want to be unique. They want to be, a groundbreaker and do their own thing. But you'd be surprised how unique you can get by just using a different idea as your ground point. Like if you take, like, for instance, the Ryan Cahill thing there, the reading order, his works very well for his books, but it wouldn't have worked for mine. But I could very easily create this little story, melodic, volatile, come up with 2 words for it that kind of fit, spend a little bit of time. I think it took me a night, like 3 or 4 hours one night, just kind of thinking through, looking at it, like, how can I make this sound cool and compelling? But taking someone else's idea that kind of I allowed blossom into my own thing, right? It's almost like you're taking somebody else's soil and you're throwing it down and planting your own seeds into it. That makes sense.
I think that is absolutely brilliant. I have not even thought about that for my series, and I guess maybe because for me, because I have so many books planned in the universe, to be honest with you, who knows? I might have to, imitation is eyes for flattery. I might have to think about that one day when I finish my series, and I do have one short story out. There's planned for many more. So, I mean, this is a brilliant thing that Ryan has done, that you picked up and made it your own, and I think that's absolutely fabulous. So kudos to you. Quickly, Alicia says thank you. So Alicia, highly recommended. Highly recommended. Ball Thunder says, "Hi, Scott."
Oh, hey, my friend. Another one of my excellent beta readers here. Just thank you. That's all. Thank you so much. I've got everyone's beta. I'm doing this new thing. I've got everybody's beta separate. They all have their own files, and now I've just layered them all into one Word file. So I can scroll down the one Word file and see everybody's comments in there. So it's really useful. And again, you guys are all keeping me company right now as I'm working through this. I see your comments daily, so I appreciate it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Ball Thunder, thanks for coming out. Thanks for supporting Scott. We appreciate it, and we appreciate what you're doing. Being a beta is a very difficult job, but again, what it adds to the writer's work is just almost immeasurable, right? Getting that feedback. So yeah,
you need to be told like this isn't good, or I don't like this. Like the best thing, I have one beta reader. I don't know if you're reading this, Patar, or if you're watching this. He's just the best because he's not afraid to tell me you can do better. And I just love that about him because it's we need that. Like I think sometimes like you said, you've written so many books in your series. I mean, at this point, it's you're doing so much that when you're writing a 250,000 word book, there may be one scene that you could have done better, but you've kind of moved past it. And these beta readers are like, no, like this needs more work so it can, get up to the level of this other stuff. And without that, I mean, you could be guilty of just sliding it through. And it's not that we're being lazy. It's that there's just so many things for us to be paying attention to that these things slip out. So it is just such a great part of the process. And I think at this point, this is book 4. I've got a really good kind of process going. I've kind of figured out like how to utilize beta feedback to its maximum. Kind of figured out I've had the same editor throughout, Kelly Ty. She's with Bramble and Crow Book. She's absolutely incredible. And I feel like as a writer, that's one of the best things you can have, especially as an indie author, is just a good team.
Yes.
But having my editor who now I feel she knows me, she knows my writing style, she knows what I'm trying to accomplish with the books. Like she knows the depth I'm trying to reach. And it's the same thing. She'll also be like, I think you can do better here. And it's just, that's what you talk about, having a good book at the end of the day. Without that team of people, it just wouldn't reach that same level,
Well, exactly. And I totally agree. And it's the same with me. And for me, it all starts with before it gets to the real editor and before it gets all to the betas, before it gets to the copy edits and the line edits, and before it gets, after it's done and it's actually going out, and before it gets to the trusted readers who, I mean, you're not changing the story, you're just getting their impressions and feedback. And usually for me, those are people who put quotes on the back. It's not like I'm changing things at that point, but I'm just getting some feedback from people I trust to see that initial. And one of them's in the audience. I'm going to address them very soon, but I just want to say that thank you again, Ball Thunder, for doing that. And quickly, just skipping ahead a minute, it says beta reading. It was a great experience. So that's again, it can be really rewarding for the beta reader as well. So I have to say what's up to my boy, Michael Delaney, Wolf Mantula, one of the best reviewers and bloggers out there. The man is just absolutely phenomenal. Michael, it always makes my day to see you in the chat, brother. Thanks for coming out. I'm guessing you're a fan of Scott's work. And if you're not, then you will be, because it is absolutely phenomenal stuff.
I say, Michael, the first time I ever saw your name was on the back of a Ryan Cahill book. And I immediately added you to social media.
This is a man who knows what he's talking about as a blogger. He is just phenomenal. Check out his content. Check out his YouTube channel. If you're into sports, if you're into NFL, he also does great fantasy sports stuff as well. Cool. So gotta plug that part of he's such a talented guy and just a wonderful human being. Check out my interview with him on 6 Elementals. He's just amazing. And I am extremely humbled and honored to have Michael be one of the endorsement quotes for my book 6 that's coming up. So sweet. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it from my heart. And actually, I think he's got the arc and he's reading it now. So when I talk about trusted readers, like the book's basically done, but these are the people that are like, I'm seeing first reaction from a very small group. Mm-hmm. Typically the people that, for me, it's the endorsement quotes. I usually have 4. And Michael, I've been so honored. Michael's done so much to promote my series. He's been so positive and endorsing, and just I owe so much of what little success I do have to people like Michael, especially. He's been such a champion. So thank you, Michael. And Ryan Cale is Michael's favorite author.
There you go. Yeah.
And of course, like I always say, Michael's had his name on bigger books than mine, including Ryan Cahill, who is, probably, one of the top indie fantasy authors out there right now. But I am extremely humbled that Michael has deigned to put an endorsement code in my book. So thank you, and that he's been such an unfailing support of this series. So, and Michael says, "Oh,
Felicien and Svidara. There you go. Those are the reading orders." Right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So, Michael, I cannot recommend this highly enough. You are a grimdark fan. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, is this stupendous. This is absolutely incredible. I cannot wait to get to the main series. So I will be getting to this in the next few months for sure. Michael, this is absolutely incredible. Go grab it, man. Like Scott is truly a rising grimdark star. You're gonna love it. You love Ryan Cahill. You loved his novellas like The Fall and stuff. Like, yeah, this is right up your alley. So, and he says, yeah, it's on the list for sure. So that's good to hear. And you definitely, it is always great to have people like Michael in your corner. Bloggers, readers, you're what makes us authors. You're what gives us the audience, what audience we have. So, it's just absolutely critical. So thank you, Michael, for all you do. And thanks so much, my friend, for coming up to check this out.
Thank you.
So we appreciate it. All right, Scott. So let's get in a bit about the book, man.
Okay, let's do it.
Wow, dude, when you're reading an author, you're going, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And you're going through, you're like, this is amazing. It's that really special feeling when you connect with a book like that. And I am absolutely not going to spoil this book. There's no way. But let's just talk about some broad strokes, some concepts, if that's okay, right?
Of course, yeah.
So this book contains characters who I would say they're nominally mostly unlikable. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah,
they're complicated. I don't want to paint them as strictly unlikable, but they're complicated, complex.
They're not your average hero, is what you should, they're not the textbook hero, is what you should say. Yeah.
Yes, they're not your textbook hero, and they have some issues, and they are caught up in a very in a catastrophe, an impending catastrophe, and when these things happen, I think most of us argue that they tend to bring out the best and the worst in human behavior. Yeah. And we see some of the worst, certainly. Yeah. We do see some of the best. We see regret. We see remorse. We see people trying to somewhat atone for things that they've done.
Yeah.
We see people tottering on the edge of madness. Yeah. We see people indulge it now in thinking that their fate is sealed and perhaps doing certain things that they wouldn't normally otherwise have done. We see all kinds of elements in this book that grimdark, some of the best of what I love about grimdark is in here. But the question I want to ask you is, your characters are essentially pushed to the brink, right? In this novel. What do you think comes out of that when you see the characters in the situation when they're pushed to brink, in terms of the way you wrote it? What comes out of that?
Yeah, the overall, what I'm trying to accomplish when I'm writing a character is I'm trying to figure out what is that point where they're on the brink. And then I kind of trace backwards a little bit and be like, I don't want to start there, right? I need to kind of give them a little bit of an arc. But I think for me, knowing where we're going to with that character, knowing the most extreme points of their arc, allows me to write it in a way where I can slowly escalate it. You know what I mean? So as far as it being a novella, so all these characters, I wanted to give them all an arc. I mean, if you're going to justify having 3 characters in a novella, you've got to make sure that their story matters. So obviously, first and foremost, each one of them plays an important role in the plot. The plot couldn't happen without each of the characters. But also, like you're saying, with pushing them to their brink, the point of the book, it's not a spoiler to say, I pitch it as this way, but there's a comet coming for the place that they're in. That's why it's called the Sound of Starfall. There's a comet coming down. I won't tell you how it's coming down or the lore behind that, but they are looking up at the sky and they're seeing a comet coming down. This is like an advanced magic society. And it is, even before the comet has come down, society has broken inside of the castle walls. So you're dealing with broken politics. You're dealing with uprisings of different clans and people who may have been on the brink of power who are now, like you said, indulging in that, going for it because it's their last chance. And then you're seeing at the same time a slave revolt, as like the people who were very much put down are now having their chains released. These bonds that were holding them down are released. And so the juxtaposition of having the star coming down, slowly getting towards you, with the characters slowly escalating and escalating and escalating, I thought it made just a great effect, an inevitable feeling of pulling you towards this end, right? And the coolest thing, what I thought personally, was like that end is the beginning. And that's why I start the book off with the quote from Pablo Picasso of, that's my own quote. Let me see. Every act of creation is first an act of destruction. And when we're talking about creating an epic fantasy series, what I wanted to do different with mine was make that moment. These moments are usually hidden. If I use A Song of Ice and Fire as an example, the doom of Valyria is not really talked about. It's kind of in the background. I wanted to flip that and make that point one of the most forefront things, and also not just have it happen in the past, but put you as a reader there as it happened. So now this is one of the most significant things that has happened to this world, and you as a reader have witnessed it. So I was trying to kind of tie you in where you're emotionally connected to the past, at the same time you're emotionally connected to the future. And I think that the only way I could really pull that off, PL, was to make these character arcs incredibly extreme. I knew that it was 3,000 years before. When you're writing an epic fantasy series, you have to leave room for your characters to grow throughout the whole book. This one, I had no holds backs to just go for it. Let's see what we can do. Human experiment. And it was fun. I mean, it was fun. And obviously thinking about how different people would react and how that would, what kind of stew that would create. That was fun too. I mean, that was like, like it's kind of a common trope in postmodernism writing, with post-apocalyptic. And obviously, like, you've read broadly, I'm sure you've read many takes on the apocalyptic story, the post-apocalyptic story. Even when you compared, we brought up R. Scott Bakker, he's got an incredible little, I mean, his story is called The First Apocalypse. So, I mean, it's got these connotations of these things that happened before. But doing that, I don't think works as well if you're just telling them about it. I think it works much better if you create characters and put the people in the eyes and in the bodies of these characters that were all the way back then. And like I said, the only way that I could make it work in 20,000 words was to make them a fast and hard arc.
You definitely succeeded. I mean, I got to get to a quick point, but just really fast. I'm just going to put up, Vault Under 317 says, gonna have to sign some copies when you come to Vancouver.
I would love
that invitation. And let's see, PL's also into DTVR. Not to be missed, Alicia. Not to be missed. Absolutely fantastic stuff. So run and put this on TBR and maybe bump it to the top if you got the space. You really aptly described what for me was how I felt about this book, and in terms of the collision of the comet, which is the actual physical thing that's happening, but coming down, and the rising up of the shall we say the morality bank of all the characters, and it's going there, the comet coming down, Raleigh Bank rising to meet, in terms of like the levels of depravity, the levels of remorse, the levels of wanting to atone for the past or feeling that they're trapped by it, the levels of, so the human experience and the human emotions and what the human actions rising up to,
Yeah.
and that's for me the collision and
Yeah.
what's going to be left when that happens. Um, I, I strongly felt, and this is what kind of what I want to hear from you based on that. I strongly felt that you really depicted exceptionally well. Everything about the novel was exceptional, but what you depicted so well is that um, it is during, it is only during that kind of event when you can see that full spectrum of what people will do and what they're willing to do and where they will go when they feel that it's hopeless.
Yeah.
And is it where some people are focused on revenge, are focused on knowing that, okay, I'm going to die, but I need to get the revenge on my hated enemy. Some people are focused on, I'm really looking back in my life and realizing all the wrong things I've done, and is there one little thing I can do? Maybe I know I'm not a good person. Maybe there's one little thing I could do to kind of make it up to this person,
Yeah.
a particular person. Um, you know, we are going to, even though we're going to die, we're going to still upturn society for the last moments of society. Like you see all these different. So this collision, you know, brings out so much, right? But I guess my question for you is that what you believe humankind and human nature is all about? I think you probably, it might be, I know you're a young guy, but you're very literate, well read. You probably watched all the movies. The movie Deep Impact, it's one of those disaster movies where okay, what's gonna, like, do you feel that is who we are, like, to the things, and not the sum of who we are, but do you think that typically those are kind of things that you see as a grimdark author? Those are the things that you would see when people are thrust into this sort of situation.
Yeah, 100%. And it's one of those that Tolkien always gets his books compared to as being an allegory for World War One. He wasn't necessarily purposely writing an allegory from what he says, but because he was trying to recreate history and lore in such a real way, he couldn't help but create an allegory subconsciously. And I think the same thing kind of happened to me. Of course, I wasn't necessarily consciously trying to say anything about human nature or human race, but obviously in writing about that, and I see personally the rising, everything escalates, and you can just see it, you can feel it, and that physical, palpable feeling of everything kind of unraveling was very fascinating to me. And it's happened throughout history way more times than we'd care to admit. And there's always these certain events that would kind of cause that thing. And again, this whole book, The Sound of Starfall, kind of came out of trying to answer some questions from a memory of song. Like, how did all this stuff happen? That 3,000 years, like, if you want to create something that's very compelling, these things usually go way, 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 way back. The sins of your father, the whole thing, it's just an endless cycle. And I think that that's exactly what it was, is it may have been a subconscious allegory for the way that human beings escalate things and the way that we tend to destroy nice things. And there was this society that was very advanced, but how they got there, they did some very questionable things, and then that gets toppled, and it's almost like society gets another chance, right? That's the illusion. But underneath of that illusion, there's people who are like, no, we're going to bring back the old way. And that's, like, again, just, I'm a big history nerd, as we talk about Bernard Cornwell a lot. You can see even in just the Saxon invasion, the history that we know is written. It's written for us. And what happened before, I mean, there was just so many things, so many factors that play into where we are today. So that's exactly why, like, I wanted to go back. How could I create a world in a memory of song that felt sufficiently falling apart. Well, it probably started about 3,000 years ago. So then I just contemplated like what would happen, and that's what it was. And even the coolest thing, when I got back 3,000 years before and I was looking at the Sound of Starfall, and I was looking at the foundations of the world of A Memory of Song, which is 3,000 years in the future, those foundations were built on top of something else that crumbled. So you have an advanced civilization that crumbled before the Starfall, right? And then another advanced civilization built on top of it. But by the time you're in A Memory of Song, that's crumbling too. So it's just these cycles, these layers. This is where the music comes in for me, the Last Ballad series. So a song in time, like there's literally time in a song, as you know, the beats, but it's usually a back and forth. The way songs are written, that's why a chorus repeats itself, because you're going forward in the verse and then back a little bit, and then forward in the verse and then back a little bit. And what that does is create the effect of it creates the effect of music, right? But it creates the effect of a coherent thing, informed by the past. So you've got your verse, which is much different than the chorus, right? And in my sense, I'm looking at the chorus as the past, right? So if you look at a song, what keeps repeating itself is the chorus. And the same way in real life, what keeps repeating itself is history. And each verse will drive us forward, and then we'll hit another chorus that's just repeating itself. And I saw this kind of cycle of history in the world related to a song in that way, because like I told you, I spent so much time playing music and writing music that I thought it was really cool to take that, which was the foundation of my creative person, and put it into my writing, which I think is, for me, writing books gives me more fulfillment than playing music ever did. But using both of them, and the kind of the base of what makes a song, and putting that into my books, I think creates, like you're saying, my vision maybe of what humanity is, and the cycles we go through, the rise and falls, and it kind of compares it to. And it, like I always say this, like I am writing grimdark. Part of the reason I do that is because for me, the most profound experiences I've had with experiencing something good came out of really, really bad. So like in the Lord of the Rings, I always use this example. I cry almost every time when Samwise picks up Frodo. He's like, "Oh, I can't carry the ring, I'll carry you." And that moment wouldn't work if Frodo wasn't dying. That moment wouldn't work if everything around them was on fire, burning. It wouldn't work if you didn't get the moment right before where both of those two just accepted they weren't going to make it. So finding that deepness of, even though this cycle of bad stuff is going on, finding the light in that, finding the people who will fight for the light in this endless cycle of darkness, that's what I was trying to capture. So like what we're getting in my epic fantasy series is the people who are willing to stand up to this cycle of darkness. And I don't think that the light shines as brightly unless you first make it dark.
Well said. So absolutely eloquently said. That represents what you're talking about. For me, is the best of dark fantasy and grimdark, when authors can portray the darkness and the beauty of the darkness and the beauty of the light, and the in some ways the issues with both, and
Yeah.
that they can only coexist. You can't have one without the other. They don't exist autonomously. The comparison, the contrasting, that is the best of grimdark and the best of dark fantasy, and perhaps fantasy overall, is when those things are held up side by side and one enriches the other and vice versa. So I think, and clearly you accomplished that.
No, thank you.
I think for me it was more of, and what I love is like, there's a lot more darkness with the light peeking through.
Yeah. Yes.
And a lot of light and speckles of darkness.
Yeah.
But again, for grimdark fans, there's a reason why Scott is already so highly decorated early in his career, and why a lot of bloggers in our space are saying such incredible things about this book, and now me included, because it is fabulous. So I'm just going to quickly put it up. Baltiner says, "Yep, Michael J. Sullivan has written 20 novels so far that span thousands of years in history of his world, Elan, and how the history that's written isn't always the truth of history. And Scott and I, as history buffs, we talked about this even when we met in person
Yes.
at London Comic Con for the first time, that, you know, history being written by the victors and that sort of thing. Like, and Scott raised that point earlier, that, yeah. And I love that element of history when we get to when the camera gets to focus out and actually show you what really happened.
Yeah,
it's such a fascinating element of what can be accomplished with fantasy and historical fiction and things like that, where, you know, where you see often the truth that was written is not as it seems.
And you get to hide it. So I've actually had some comments of people being like, well, this isn't what happened. Like, this is a mistake. And I'm like, no, this is what was history was. I purposely showed you what happened so that you can now see that history wrote it in a different way. You know what I mean? Like, so peeling that veil back and showing you, like, I was just so fascinated by that in real life. And I thought of a way to add it into my books would be to do it that way, right? To blatantly put you in the time that it happened. And then when you're reading the main books, which are on the main storyline, you'll see things and they'll be like, well, this happened this way. And you're like, I know it didn't happen that way because I was there within the characters who lived that, right? And that contradiction is just like, I think that's just one of the cool things we can do with literature in general is like, we're writing stories, right? So like why should we write a story that's true? Like, within our own story, we're making up a whole fantasy world. So why does the main story have to be like, there's inconsistencies in the story I'm telling because there's inconsistencies in history, right? So
yeah. And isn't that so much about what so many of our conflicts and our disagreements, and where we find common ground, even when we realize, you know, perspectives aren't perhaps what, if there's two people talking and they see an incident one way and like it's actually not either the way either one of them saw it. Like, there's your version, my version, the truth, which is somewhere, you know, in between. And I think that's part of the human experience, right? And you know what is, unfortunately, is a source of major conflict, but also an opportunity for a lot of positive things to happen. So you know, but Wolf Mantula, Michael Delaney also compliments you on your explanation, which again was extremely eloquent. So I think Michael Delaney is definitely going to you know, because he's a very discerning reader, and I think he senses automatically that your stuff is special. So I won't be surprised if he picks that up in the near future. I know he's got a big TBR like we all do, but I think he's definitely got your book on his radar. So I also have some general questions about the series. So of course, I read this marvelous novella, and I was privileged to make a book exchange with you to have the first book in your Last Ballad series, Memory of Song. So you have the second book in the main series published.
Yeah, I got it right here, Course of War.
Beautiful covers.
It was a really big one. So this one is, again, where I was telling you about that first one I wrote as a standalone with series potential. So you're going to get two POV characters. You're going to get a full story. So like when you read through the book, I compare it often to Hunger Games, not for the plot, but in the Hunger Games, the first book, they go to the games and then they finish the games. There's a very clear, like, you know, obviously you can still carry the story on, but there's a very like set kind of and that's how you kind of had to write if you wanted to query for books. So that one came out that way, even though I changed my mind later down the line. But book 2 was, I'm already self-published. We've got a book and a novella out, and book 2 is like gloves are off, 7 POVs, and it just explodes. So I've got a map. You see, like this. So we've got a lot of maps.
Oh, that's stunning.
So this is the main map that the world takes place in, but we've got a lot of like it goes across the ocean. It's a very big broad map, but like we were talking about earlier, it's hard to start a story and just have it all over the place. But once I had the Sound of Starfall established and a Memory of Song established, where you've kind of got your Shire, like it kind of established, this is the Shire, these are the people that you're going to need to know for the whole series. Then it was opened up, and it was very cool because I told you I cut the character from book 1, and I got to do this thing where I just had to rewrite this character in particular. but change everything so it happened afterwards instead of before. It
Okay.
was still it was still good to do. Like, it still worked very well, in the plot because it was conflict, and conflict is obviously there's one point, there's a catalyst moment. So I just took that catalyst moment instead of it happening here, it happened here, and it was just cool to see everything expand and open up.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but the big thing for me was when I did this map and I made it like a sprawling world map. Um, I already knew like cultures was going to be my thing. Like with history and lore and mythology, how does that stuff work? With this the clashing of cultures, and obviously if I'm going to do a timepiece where I'm going 3,000 years back in time, you're going to see cultures come and go and develop and change over time. That's just how history was. So writing that into my own book was a really fun kind of experiment. But having the map so big, and I think you do this in your books too, it allows you to explore different areas. And it's almost sometimes you can almost be writing a different book.
Yeah.
You get like I have characters who now have crossed the sea. Sorry, that might be a little bit of a spoiler. I do apologize. But anyways, once they get across and things start opening up, I mean, the latest book I just wrote, um, A Dance in the Dust. This is very much inspired by Roman and like Rome and Carthage war, and it's in the East, and it's got a very Mediterranean kind of feel, which coming from me, like A Chorus of War and A Memory of Song are very heavily based in Celtic Northern kind of style. So it was just so interesting to see it all open up, but it's allowed for me to kind of experiment with everything that I ever wanted to do in writing. So it's kind of this like this really fun thing that most like a lot of authors who aren't doing these big grand series, they don't get the opportunity to explore these different things. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I totally agree. And I was talking about this on live the other day that, just like in my series, I have, different parts of my universe that are analogous to, again, a Mediterranean, Middle Eastern,
Yeah.
an African, a Britain, a British, kind of European, and the beauty of, I think, I always lament when, frankly, some of my favorite worlds, and of course, it's the author's prerogative, but it's like, they could write hundreds of books in this year because the universe is so broad, right? This
Yeah.
is like saying, with A Song of Ice and Fire, like Westeros is one part, but then there's Yeti, and then there's Essos,
Exactly.
and then there's like George R. Martin can spend the rest of his life
Yeah.
writing, dozens of books within the universe, but yet a lot of authors choose to move on to, and there's nothing wrong with that, move on to totally new universe created. But I also lament that there's so much more of that
So much more.
I want to see.
And that's what my biggest inspiration is, A Song of Ice and Fire. Like when I was doing my world building, I actually had the world building book open to make sure, and also Silmarillion, like I made sure that everything that was in those books was in mine. I was like scrolling through, it's like, oh, these guys have a hero. And I was like, oh, they have a culture hero and a legendary hero. And then there's like folk heroes. Like I need all of those levels for each culture or it won't feel real, right? And then each one needs a creation myth. Each one needs all of, and I went right down to the very nitty gritty. So now when I've got this map, each place is named, right? Every place has a name, but like beyond that name, I know who lives there, what the family history is, how they've got to that point, and it's all written in a document that I have, like a world building document, and like I'm only using little tiny little snippets of it in my book. But what I think that does, and what I always said when I used to read, I was like, I like it when it feels like the author knows way more than me. And if I'm reading and I get the feeling for a second that the author doesn't know more than me, then it completely throws me out. Because
Yeah.
it's like, how can I trust, like, if you see small mistakes keep popping up, it's like, no, but this was this, and like, no, this happened. I'm like, he's not even paying attention. It's like, so basically, like, it was paying attention, making sure everything built naturally. Um, but it always came back to this grand thing that you're trying to tell this grand story. But every single book that I ever read, it always came back to the characters. Whose point of view are you in? And that's how is this person experiencing the world?
Yes.
Because I can make all this stuff. I can tell you stories about lore and history and mythology and everything. But if it's not a character experiencing that, then it's just you're just reading a textbook, right? And so the way I really like to do stories is have somebody tell them, because everybody loves to be told a story, right? So like if I'm trying to give lore, I'll usually have either sung by a bard, or you're sitting around a campfire and somebody's telling you, or like the kind of way you would naturally receive a story. So it feels like story time and not like here's me explaining my textbook encyclopedia world. You know what I mean? And then by having the character whose mind you're in hear the story, think about it, and experiencing it, that's the filter that you
Yes.
have to kind of run all of your world building and lore through. And I think that was when I figured that out, I was really start able to build this out in like like it really started to feel flesh and bone, because these things weren't just created on a sheet, which is half the battle, probably three-quarters of the battle, but now they're initiated into the world, not just from like an omniscient God saying that these things exist, but from the people who live there talking about their experience with these things, their memories of these things, how they may have heard stories from their grandparents, and these things are passed down, and it's like these stories mean something to them. So it's not just like, oh, here's how these people, this is the creation myth of the Feldara. You're learning like, this is who I am. Like the person is telling you their creation myth as like part of the character. And again, running everything through the lens of the character, it allows every single moment where it would be otherwise exposition, that exposition almost becomes a character building.
Yes.
You know, because now you're getting an opportunity to show how this character is reacting to this certain thing, and all these little things are what build a true human personality. And obviously, like if you say you get a new job and you're working with some new coworkers, it could take you a month or two to really kind of figure out who that person is, right? But I don't know if you've ever had the experience, if you're just in a work setting, but then your boss is like, okay, we're going out for drinks, in that setting where you're removed from, and you're just kind of getting to know the person, and their life experience is coming out through their own filter. Now you understand that person, right? Where if you were just to tell me, oh, this person's grumpy, blah blah, but then I'm like, oh, I met that guy, like he's just tired, I don't think he's grumpy. You know, like there's all these different nuances that I just believe that this is kind of a rant, but if you're gonna build a world, it's my belief that the world should come through the eyes of the characters always.
Yeah, bingo. I totally concur. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're so successful as a writer, why you're so adept as a writer, because that's certainly shone through in this novella. And I have no doubt, absolutely zero doubt, I've ever heard. I've only heard positive rave reviews about this series, that I have no doubt I'm going to see that when I get to the main series. I think that just from listening to you talk, obviously your intelligence and your intellect comes out, but I think your craft and what went into it really, really shines through, Scott, as you talk. And I think that people who listen to this chat are only going to be that much more encouraged to just run out and grab this, because I think this is like, you are definitely, and I'm not saying this just to say it, I think you are one of the rising stars of Grimdark. And I think that more and more people, when they start reading your stuff, are going to realize just how good you are, at that. And hey, just a bonus that you're an awesome guy, fellow Canadian.
Yes.
Those are all just pluses in my book. So,
yeah.
But I do want to, ask you quickly, because I wanted to make this comment just because, but quickly, Michael Delaney just said something, said, unrelated. I'm going to post a video in a bit of me backyard watching this film. Michael's awesome.
A guy who could laugh at himself is
and he is just such a great guy.
I've followed Michael for a while. I know that we like each other's posts and sometimes all that, but I definitely know who you are, and I followed you for a long time. I appreciate everything you do as well, Michael, and I look forward to seeing you wipe out.
He is phenomenal. But so I want to say that I found this, and I wasn't snooping, so don't think I was creeping you. I mean, I'm a big fan of your writing, but I wasn't saying creepy. It just happened. I think I did it it's one of those things you're clipping stuff and you click by accident.
Yeah.
So I think I was trying to add your like update my Goodreads with like your book, or I don't know what I was doing, but I think I was trying to click your author profile to get a picture or something, but I happened to click on by accident your red, your Goodreads red um, category. So I have it open here, and I'm just gonna I don't want to embarrass you. I'm just gonna read off some of the books that you've read recently. So Hannibal, the military genius who conquered Rome.
Yep.
The Great Courses, Joyce's Ulysses, the picture of Dorian Gray. Collected Poems of Yeats.
Yeats.
Clear Thinking, Turning Ordinary Moments into Extraordinary Results. Beowulf, Ulysses. The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Middle Ages Around the World. A Christmas Carol. Vacations, Paradise Lost. I mean, I could go on, but I mean, clearly, you are someone who is extremely well read and someone who has a joy of reading and literature, and someone who reads the classics, and someone who reads books that are more what a lot of people consider reference material, or instructional books. You know, so your reading seems very, very diverse. And yes, I can see you've read fantasy and you've read Rothfuss and all that, but a lot of your reading has seemed to focus on that. So can you tell us why? Why is your reading stray towards that?
Yeah, I love this question so much. I've actually I've secretly been hoping someone would ask me this, I think. So PL, you mentioned my prose. Like, what I'm trying to do by reading these books is, like, obviously I read a lot of fantasy, and I was trying to figure out what books lasted throughout history. What are the things that people are writing about that never go out of style? And that's what I wanted to write about. So I'm on this journey of reading through the classics, and I started back with ancient Greece and Rome, and read a lot of the Stoics, and read like the philosophy and all that stuff, which blew my mind apart. And moving further in, and like you mentioned, Paradise Lost, and I'm reading Dante. I'm on Purgatorio, and these things have certain themes that have resonated throughout history. So the reason that they're still talked about today, the reason that they're taught in schools and universities around the world, is because they have a message, and these messages were deemed very important by humanity, not just one generation, but multiple generations. And there's a thing called the literary tradition, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. Being a lifelong creative, I didn't just want to write a book. It was my goal to write a book that made it into the literary tradition. So I had to understand the literary tradition. I had to understand that we're writing in postmodernism, and my wife and I talk about this a lot. It was like we're really deep into the postmodernism era, and we're at a point where it needs to be changed. I do want to be the author that I want to do some experimental stuff in the future that like pushes literature forward. I know that sounds very pretentious. That's just like my personal goal. But the reason I'm doing fantasy is that's where my love is. That's what I love. The world, creating a world was the goal. That was the thing that, like, how can I do this? Literature seemed to be the best tool to be able to do that. Like I told you, I was trying to play Skyrim and create, and that was too much of using somebody else's creation. Like, I realized if I'm going to do this the way I want to, I got to start from the ground up. And like, how do you do that? Like, I read everything. I have multiple religions, so I had to read the Bible. I had to read all these things. And like, I'm not an inherently religious person, but reading these things and understanding these themes and these different books that have just lasted throughout time not only made me a better writer, but it's made me a better person. It's made me a better husband, a better father, a better friend. And I just think that it is a message that I want to get out more, is that, and we're seeing it. I'm so thankful because we're seeing these classic books start to get remade into movies a lot. And I really see a lot of readers reading them as well. Like, I know The Count of Monte Cristo is something that's become really popular in the last couple of years. And that gives me a lot of hope. because that just shows that humanity is trying to hold on to these themes and these things that have resonated with us throughout history, that have made us who we are. But they're also the lessons that we have taught each other. So I say this a lot, and this is a great, I think, a little reference. So I'm a 35-year-old man, and I grew up before phones, but phones came in when I was about 9, 10, like young age. So I've had very much my life has been lived digitally. However, I'm not like I know how to do some handiwork. Like I can use a drill. I can do these things, but my front door broke, and I didn't know how to fix. Like I couldn't fix. So I'm like, we're living in this age where we've kind of lost a lot of skill that was should have been passed on by our forefathers. And this is not a shot at my parents or anything, but it's just weird that we're like so many people don't know how to do things. And I think personally, I was like, if I'm going to be a writer, I need to understand how this was done throughout time. And all these people have, all these writers have spent their life making their craft what it is. And then they put that on paper to share with you. Like that is like literally you get to stand on the shoulders of thousands of years of authors, right? And I kind of felt like there's this one line that I've read. I don't remember where it's from. This is what happens when you read too many books, but it's like if you haven't read like hundreds of books on the topic that you're into, so like for me, I'm a writer. If I haven't read hundreds of books on writing, then I'm technically illiterate, meaning like I should be, if I want to be a writer, I should be reading writers. Like, and that's not to take away from any modern stuff, but I just kind of tend, when you're reading modern stuff, it's hard to tell the lasting power of it because like it's modern. Like we don't know, it could be very good, but I want to know why has it lasted 30, 40 years. A Christmas Carol, it seemed like the one that was standing out, but I'm telling you, that is one of the greatest pieces of literature ever written. 200 years ago, more than 200 years ago, look how much it's still remade. It's retold every year. It's remade every year. If you read that book, it just hits you in ways. And I'm doing this thing, PL, where I'm rereading it every year. So this is my third year rereading it. Every year, I'm at a different point in my life. So 3 years ago, my daughter was 1, and I was reading it through this lens, And then last year, I was reading it through the lens of like, oh, my bosses are so much like Scrooge. Well, and then now this year I have a completely different lens. And what happens is the old Stoic saying of you don't ever step in the same river twice. And even though you're reading the same book again, your life is moving forward like a river, and you're coming to that book at a different point in the river. And I feel like that metaphor applies to where we are as in literature as a whole. So if I'm at this point in the river where you and I are way ahead, we have all these people that we get to look back on. But if I didn't go back up the river and kind of see how the water that I'm in got to where it is, I figured I wouldn't be able to do my craft as best as I could. And then once I started this journey, I was just sucked in by the prose and just the literature, the impact of long-lasting, potent literature hit me in ways that fantasy never did. And when reading A Song of Ice and Fire and Robin Hobb, Patrick Rothfuss, I came to the conclusion that these things were high literature, that these authors took every quality that these high literature books had and put it into their fantasy. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do, is I need to follow in the footsteps of these guys and not just write something from my imagination, because I mean, it sounds harsh, but like my daughter, she's 4, she's got a really big imagination, but she couldn't write a book. So like imagination itself isn't enough to write something that will last through time and give back to the world what I'm getting out of it, I think is the biggest thing. Like, and that's what these writers, what I was trying to explain with passing on your knowledge. Reading all these books, I can put stuff back into my books that I can hope is just passing that knowledge on. So a more modern reader might read it and be like, I don't know why I like this so much, but really you're reading a passage that was, inspired by John Steinbeck, and you don't know that, but you're reading something from 1930 in 2026, and you're like, this still works. And, and it's, again, not too much of a spoiler, but I have a dynamic in A Memory of Song that was very much inspired by Lenny in Of Mice and Men. And if I didn't read of Mice and Men, A Memory of Song would not be what it is, just plain and simple.
Well, that's giving me chills now, because obviously, that is a book that has made a major impact on me.
Yes.
I think if you looked at our reading lists, I've read pretty well every book that you have on that years ago. Some in school, of course, I'm a bit older than you, but I so admire that, and I so admire the fact that that is your goal, because of course, and we talk about those time, I've talked with many authors, of course we need books for pure entertainment value. We need those books. We need those books that are not aspiring to become legendary or an iconic book, or a book that will resonate throughout time. We need, but I think the beauty, especially of indies and the way the publishing industry is going, is that I feel a lot of those books now that will become future foundational books are being written in the indie sphere, because those authors have something to say and they're going for it, and they are trying to get the message. They're trying to be a foundational book. They are shooting for the stars. They want to be a book that lasts, that their message and their prose and their writing lasts and transcends generations. And I think I'm more and more seeing that in the indie sphere, because they're not writing to market. They are writing those stories. And I think, and I think if that's your goal, my friend, I think you're probably on your way. So, but quickly, unless you want to say, that's why I'm always reading Jane Austen, everybody.
And Bronte, Wuthering Heights is actually like the love, the kind of love thread that I have in A Memory of Song that works through the books, very much inspired by Heathcliff and Catherine, like 100%, like that kind of toxic, which, you know what else? I think that is also Harley Quinn and Joker. Same story. And that's why it's just like the reason that Marvel, like those stories have stuck, because they're using those themes, and you can kind of see a very clear example there. But it's like using the themes of making it very much your own. But you can see that Catherine and Heathcliff, man, they're redoing the movie again. I think I'm pretty sure
they are. They are.
That story is it's going to work. It's going to work on every level, because that is inherently human. That like
timeless. It's timeless. And see, Alicia. So Alicia, I know you're sold on Scott already, just from just listening to him talk for 5 minutes. So that you are totally sold. So, my friend, I could talk to you all night. Really. I'm going to have to stop myself from night, but I want to respect your time. Before we sign off, I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about where people can buy your books, how many books you have out, etc. Where people can find you on social media, follow you, things such as that, to kind of wrap up the conversation.
Okay. Yeah, perfectly. So the Last Ballad series, it's the title of my entire series. I'll tell you how the books are planned, and then I'll tell you where to get them. So it's called the Last Ballad series. We've got the first verse, A Memory of Song, the second verse, A Chorus of War, and then planned, there's going to be a third verse and a fourth verse. As of right now, we've got the first verse, A Memory of Song, and then the prelude, The Sound of Starfall. And then the second book, A Chorus of War. The next book that's coming out is another prelude before book 3, which is called A Dance in the Dust. It again deals with the past. I'm kind of setting this up very similar as how I explain it is to the way Star Wars is done, with episode 1, 2, and 3 being before, episode 4, 5, and 6 afterwards. Except I have 4 main books in the main timeline: first verse, second verse, third verse, fourth verse, and then in between each of those verses there's a prelude. So you've got first prelude, The Sound of Starfall; second prelude, A Dance in the Dust; third prelude, not yet named. Sound of Starfall is 3,000 years in the past. A Dance in the Dust is 1,300 years in the past. The third prelude will be 300 to 400 years in the past. So you're kind of getting a timeline of ancient history that catches up with the first 4 books, which are taking place on the same timeline, which I call the current timeline. First verse, second verse, third verse, and fourth verse are the big books. They're the ones that are the chonkers, as I would say. So we've got this book is like 150,000 words. This is 230,000. This is 25,000. So it's a lot smaller, but the novella that's coming out is not a novella. It's 100,000 words. So the way these preludes are, it's a bit confusing, and I fully admit that, but this is why I'm trying to build trust. And I'm trying to get the whole thing across that we're playing the verses, and then the preludes kind of act as the chorus, if that makes sense. So you've got a verse, a chorus, a verse, a chorus, a verse, a chorus. And as I explained earlier, in a song, the chorus is always a callback. And that's kind of the effect I'm trying to give with the series of 4 verses, 3 preludes to create a ballad. Long-winded, I know. You can buy all of these books on Amazon, anywhere on Amazon. They're all like the ebook, hardback, paperback available. You can get special illustrated versions that have a couple extra little things on the Broken Binding website, which you're going to get just little things like this that will kind of just add to the reading experience as you're going through. And this one's a comet. You can see that. And those versions are available at thebrokenbinding.co.uk. You can also find on my website, you can order signed editions from me, which is just scottpalmerauthor.com. You can get customized signed editions, and I can ship them to you anywhere in the world. Obviously, we're dealing with a tariff situation at the moment, but I can still accommodate, however. And I think that's it. I mean, they're available Barnes & Noble, Indigo, all the big sites that you'd expect. Obviously, the big one, Amazon, and then the Broken Binding would be your exclusive.
So much.
My cat.
During that, oh, there's a cutie.
Sushi.
Sushi? Oh, that's awesome name. Hey, Sushi.
Thank you, Michael.
Mike's a great job. Yeah, definitely, Michael. You definitely want to bump this up here. This is phenomenal. Thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Just like I said, I could talk to you for hours. I know you got to eat dinner. I have to too.
Yes.
Thank you to everyone who came by in the chat. Alicia, Birdie, and the books. Heath Smith, Craig, Hato, Ball Thunder, 3170, Wolf, the wonderful Wolfman Tool, Michael Delaney. Thanks everybody. If I missed anybody, I apologize. Thanks everybody for coming by. And in the chat, thanks everyone who's going to watch this on the replay. You are what makes this type of long form content amazing. All hail long form content. I'm telling you, it's the best thing in BookTube, and I firmly believe that it's not going anywhere, and it's only going to get better and better as algorithms change, and people want to connect, especially with authors. And it's formats like this that really bring that across. I think anybody who's watched this is so impressed with Scott, and it automatically is going to want to go and grab his stuff because, just hearing about it from the author himself, I think that's definitely something you're going to want to do. So thanks again, Ball Thunder, 170, and Smith, thank you so much for coming out to support.
Thank you, Heath. Happy traveling, Heath.
Yeah, travel safely, especially this weather. Quickly, PL Stewart, Draw Kingdom Saga, plstewart.com is the website. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, everything's at PL Stewart Writes in terms of handle. Draw Kingdom Saga, the books. 5 books out now in the 7-book series. The current book out right now is A Pack of Wolves, book 5. Book 6, A Black Dragon on Red, is coming out in 2026. The cover reveal with the wonderful Blaze and Conan from Under the Radar Books is occurring in 2 weeks. So get ready for that. And as well, of course, my short story, Forest Dark in the Shapers World Anthology, my first foray into fantasy horror. You might want to check that out. It's a great time to read, I think, anytime, but especially when you get to this juncture of the series, I think it's really going to add something there. So, and of course, the series is almost done. So book 6 coming out, and book 7 will come on 2027, God willing, and then we'll move on to other aspects of the Dragon Kingdom Saga. So, and of course, 6 Elemental Interviews, my YouTube channel, the Dragon Kingdom Saga as well. That's the name of it. Where I get to interview absolutely phenomenal creatives like Scott. Now we're up into the 50s and 60s with these interviews, and of course page touring with my awesome partner, Taylor from Made Pieces Pages. Check out her YouTube channel. She is brilliant. We have been taking a bit of a hiatus from page touring, but we're coming back, and we're coming back with a vengeance.
Nice.
So, watch that as well. So for all of you out there, again, please, I hope you're safe and well, especially with this big storm going through North America. Please stay warm. I hope you have power. I hope you and your family and your pets and everyone is safe. And read lots of books, and read Scott Palmer. Read his books, because he is a fabulous author. If you like grimdark, if you like the Joe Abercrombies and the Backers and the Cahills, etc., you won't go wrong with his stuff. All right. So thank you to Alicia, and again, stay safe. Have a good night, and we will sign off, Scott and I, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.